Welcome back, Sega fans. It's the Sega guys, back once again, where the hedgehogs are blue and the hills are green. I'm Dan, the Mega Driver, and here's the knuckles to my knack. It's James the Segaholic. How you doing, mate?
I maybe put a couple of knuckles out there, just taking a try and create his. I got my white gloves, mate. That's it. But
Do you chuckle or flex your muscles? I'm hard as nails. It ain't hard to tell. I knock them out if I'm solid or frail.
that's it, mate. We started singing already. That's it.
Oh,
It's-
yeah.
How long? How
Is it
many
unknown?
minutes?
Yeah, it's a record, isn't it? 30 seconds in. What's the song? Unknown to ME, isn't it? The Sonic Adventure tune. Oh,
That's
what a
right.
classic. Yeah.
Oh,
so
man.
whenever you pop him in the Sonic story, you bump into Knuckles and it goes doom 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 doom.
That's right.
Oh,
Oh,
great stuff,
brilliant.
mate. But
Brilliant.
yeah, we're talking about Sonic Adventure. Well, if people haven't seen the title or know what the episode's about, looked at the episode summary, or we're talking about Sonic, but we're not talking about 128-bit. We're not talking about 32-bit. We're not even talking about 16-bit. Mr. Segaholic, what are we talking about here?
It's Sonic Jim, but not as we know it. Yes, mate. We're talking about, well, first just to kind of set the scene, we've been asked a lot to do some more 8-bit stuff because we will admit we're very kind of Saturn, Dreamcast, Mega Drive. We kind of go to them because it's kind of more kind of topical and stuff. But the Master System and Game Gear exist. 8-bit systems are a large part of Sega's heritage. So we thought we've also not done a lot of Sonic content, oddly enough.
We've not done a single Sonic video in the nearly a year that we've been on YouTube. So
Yeah. So we thought, let's take out a couple of birds with one stone. We'll hit the 8-bit and we'll hit Sonic. And today we are ranking the 8-bit Sonic the Hedgehog games.
absolutely, mate. And I think it's important to note what these games actually mean to us, because obviously, as you say, we spend a lot of time talking about the Mega Drive, the Saturn, and the Dreamcast, because they're basically the big three Sega systems, aren't they? They're the ones that everyone remembers. And
yeah,
the poor little Master System does get shuffled to the side a bit. I have tried to give it a little bit of love on the channel with the shorts. Obviously, the top 10 childhood Sega Master System games, I absolutely love doing that. The Indiana Jones game, I absolutely hate that game, but I think the important thing to note for viewers and listeners on this one is that these are very special games to both of us, because these were respectively our first Sega systems, the first consoles from Sega that we could call our own. I mean, mine was my brother's Master System 2, and yours was the Game Gear, of course.
Yep, it was indeed, mate. So our first experience of the Blue Blur was on 8-bit. So I think it's only right to respect that little bit of kind of Sega royalty in our lives.
Absolutely, mate. I mean, what was your first one? Was Sonic 2, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was the pack I remember I got, it had the Sonic the Hedgehog sticker in the bottom corner. So it came with Sonic 1, but Sonic 2 was in there. It was after like this had launched. It wasn't like a launch kind of period at all. It was later on. But Sonic 2, and like as we'll come on to whenever we go to talk about it, vastly different in style to the Mega Drive version. But Sonic Spinball as well was another big, favourite. We'll get to that in due course. But again, playing that on 8-bit. So yeah, the history of me wanting that Mega Drive, never getting one, finally kind of getting a Game Gear, and getting to actually experience a bit of Sonic firsthand. So yeah, brilliant, mate.
Yeah. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through, we're ranking these Sonic games. So from our least favorite to our absolute favorite. Now, obviously, I think we've got both had different views, and we've talked about this through the day. And the way that we did it is I ranked the games, you ranked the games, and then we kind of aggregated it. James might have changed his mind once or twice through the day as he reacquainted himself with them. I think it's pretty important to be clear, though. We are only talking about the main platform games. So we're not going to be talking about Tails Adventure or Sky Patrol. We're not talking about Sonic Drift 1 or 2. We're certainly not going to be talking about Sonic Labyrinth or I'm sure I'm forgetting one, but there was plenty of Sonic spin-offs. If you play Sonic Origins, they're all on there. So that's one way. The Sonic Origins Plus that's just recently come out. So this kind of makes it a little bit topical as well, mate. But yeah, we are talking about, in release order here, Sonic the Hedgehog for the Master System Game Gear, Sonic the Hedgehog 2 for the same two systems, Sonic Chaos, Sonic Spinball, that's the 8-bit version, Sonic Triple Trouble, and Sonic Blast, aka G-Sonic. So we're going to start with what scored the least points, or what we both ranked the lowest, and we're going to work our way all the way up to what was number one. So when it comes to the wooden spoon, mate, bottom of the list, when we added everything up together, the ultimate loser of the 8-bit Sonics was Sonic Spinball.
Yeah, and not, I think, because of the premise of the game, but I just think the sad thing for this, mate, is that, like, Sonic Spinball, I loved it on the Game Gear, right? And again, I don't know if it's that kind of romanticising nostalgia, blue tinted specs, you know, but I went back and I played it tonight. I've played the Mega Drive version very recently, and I enjoy that. I do like the Mega Drive version, but when I went back and I played the Master System version, which the Game Gear version will be near identical to, it had aged really badly. Like, the frame rate's really low. It jutters really, really bad whenever Sonic tries to go off screen or up pipes. It didn't. No, mate. just honestly, it's amazing that I know people kind of accuse retro gamers of kind of having that kind of, like, sometimes it's hard to take off the nostalgia, but in this occasion, there was nothing that brilliant, wonderful memory of playing it on the Game Gear, you know, before I hit teenage years, could even have imagined that it was so disappointing, really, because I loaded it up and I really expected to jump back and then have a bit of fun with it, and it just didn't click at all. It was actually quite sad.
Yeah, I mean, I can imagine it being one of those rare occasions. We go back to games all the time with low frame rate. You'd have thought that us going back to stuff like Daytona on the Sega Saturn would make us think, oh, what is this? But it's Daytona on the Sega Saturn is good. It's still good fun, despite the graphical shortcomings in the frame rate. Mate, I'm going to be harsher than you. It's absolute garbage. And I've got to admit, I don't like the Mega Drive original. I really don't like it. I went
really?
back.
Like,
yeah,
oh mate, that was some venom in that.
So put yourself back, put me back in my 1993 mindset. Sonic the Hedgehog is the greatest thing on earth to me. I mean, I love Sonic more than I love Transformers at that stage. I love Sonic so much. And I remember, the Casino Night Zone on the Mega Drive game was amazing. Absolutely loved that. And then I remember playing this in a shop on a demo pod and just thinking, this doesn't feel right. And every time I've gone back to it, it just feels worse and worse. And I'm talking about the Mega Drive version here. The physics are absolutely appalling. And I was reading earlier someone calling it a halfway house. It doesn't know if it wants to be a pinball game or a platform game. It tries to be both and it achieves neither. I would rather play Sonic 06 back to back than play this. I can't stand it. And the Master System version is even worse. It runs at half the frame rate. It looks ugly. There's all these graphical glitches. Some of the kind of presentation is quite nice, and apes the Mega Drive original quite well. But no, it's a dog's dinner, mate. I can't stand it. Sorry. And that's the most harsh of anyone will probably ever hear me be about a Sega game ever, especially a Sonic game. But
I'm going to say, mate, I mean, I thought it was quite good you managed to somehow get the Saturn in there. I mean, you even, we're not talking about Saturn, but we still got Daytona mentioned. I loved how you started off with that, but wow, that was impassioned, mate.
Yeah. And as we go up the list, my mood will change. And I think when you compare it to what came before, what my first Sonic game was, and what the games that I played after, and the ones that I really, really love, compared to this, it doesn't deserve to have the Sonic name on there as far as I'm concerned. I think it's awful. I know it has its fans. I know it has its fans. Who was playing it last year? I think Jim from Drink a Beer Play a Game did a playthrough of it, and I think he said it was he had some pretty harsh words to say about it, but he played it through to completion, I think, with some save states. I have to refresh my memory, but I was like, how did you complete this awful game? And yeah, it's no secret I own it, and good God, I've tried so many times to love it. And everyone goes, Dan, it's not that bad. Dan, you just have to get used to the fact that it's not a Sonic game. It's not a Sonic game, and it's not a pinball game. It's just shit, is my opinion. But there we go.
On today's episode of Anger Management.
Yeah. Sorry, not sorry on that one. I don't like it. No, sir, I don't like it. So with that little outburst out of the way, it's only right we move on to the next one. So this we both ranked Spinball last. Second from last, our fifth choice out of these games was Sonic Blast. Sonic Blast, second from last.
So
this
so
wasn't
with it singing, with it rhyming.
So many talents on the Sega guys.
Not just pretty faces, mate.
What do you think of this one, mate? This was an interesting one, I thought.
I mean, my first thought was, like, this was really why does it remind me of Donkey Kong Country, right? It's almost like the Sonic kind of sprite on it. They've tried to do something with the animation to make it look 3D, and it kind of almost works. The stage graphics are pretty basic by Sonic standards. This is the one that was G-Sonic in Japan.
That's right, mate. I think, just sorry to interrupt you there, but I think, and again, we're looping back round to all this content we've got in the background here, but the document leak says one of the Sega's bullet points was make all Saturn games 3D and all Mega Drive and Game Gear games look like 32-bit games. So this I think is one of them.
That's a good point, mate. Aye, everything's this leak is just literally it's like roots, mate. They're just branching out and touching every point now. It's like, and that is what I thought they were trying to do. Like the way that the kind of Sonic sprite moves, it just reminded me of Donkey Kong Country, as I said. But if you play it on the Master System, that was Tectoy had a Brazilian port of that. Now, from what I read on the Sonic Retro site, is that because the game was designed for the Game Gear and was meant to take advantage of the Game Gear's higher color palette, when they kind of reversed it back to kind of put it onto Master System, it lost a bit of that kind of more vibrancy, which is why it looks a lot more washed out, I think, on the Master System side. So the one thing about it is that it goes at a decent speed, and that's one of the kind of slight criticisms I've got of the next two games we're going to cover, is that I don't think they move quite as smoothly as the kind of two headline Sonic games on the 8-bit systems, but Blast moved at a decent pace. I know you'd mentioned before we came on air talking about the underwater sections later on, the frame rate took a bit of a hit on it, but in the main, it's not, you're not going to rank it massively high up the list, but it's not a hellish game. The only problem is that the Master System port of it looks worse just because of that kind of going from a handheld version that was meant to use a higher color palette than the console it ended up on. But interesting one. I hadn't played it until, I had no reason to play it, so I hadn't played it until recently, and I was pleasantly surprised by it.
Yeah, so I think we both ranked this one fifth. And I was kind of dreading going back to this one. And I went back, I first played this, must be around 2002, 2003, when I was first emulating. I played the Master System version, and I thought, God, this is awful. However, playing it last night, I actually got into this. Now, I think it's interesting that you say it plays at a decent lit, because I thought it was actually really slow. But then I think it feels a lot slower to me, especially it feels like Sonic's straining to get up ramps and loops sometimes. It's like you're holding, he's like trying to get up them. But what I will say, and I think this comes back to the point that you're making about the next two games in this list, the frame rate was absolutely solid in it. probably more so than almost every other Sonic game on this list, apart from the fun that we've got in first place. It was, once you get over the fact that this Master System version looks a bit washed out, the 3D pre-rendered look doesn't quite come off, I think, the way that they intended it to. The enemies are absolutely tiny, and Sonic's huge, and he's got a very strange running animation. And part of me thinks
springs are small as well. They're
Yeah.
everything about it, all the elements are kind of shrunk down.
Yeah, it's weird. It's definitely made for the Game Gear screen. Obviously, this was November 1996 that this came out, but it was by Aspect, and Aspect made Sonic 2, Sonic Chaos, Sonic Triple Trouble for the Master System and Game Gear. Obviously, Triple Trouble was Game Gear only. But Aspect made this, and once you give it some time, it's a solid little platformer. It's not the best Sonic game, which is why we've ranked it where it is, but it's not terrible. I think I was reading some, a lot of there was a lot of backlash around this one, probably more about the way it looked. And I was one of the people back in the day that played this and thought, Jesus Christ, what were they thinking with this? Why? But once you sit down, it's very easy. I got to the water level with four emeralds at this stage, and the water level was where the frame rate tanked, and there were some really questionable level design choices in there. Where there's invisible water currents that you've got to avoid, and pipes that you've got to navigate, and the Chaos Emerald's in this really weird, annoying position. But aside from that, it's solid. It's a good 7 out of 10 Sonic game, I think. It's not great. You wouldn't play it above any of the others 4 above it. You certainly wouldn't play it above any of the Mega Drive Sonics, except for Spinball, because it's shit. We're still going there. But after everything else, it's okay. I think it's acceptable. It's not. I wouldn't say it's fine. It'd be better if it wasn't a horrendous pre-rendered monstrosity. But it's okay.
I think if you were someone who was still on the 8-bit systems, or if you were like a kid back then with a Game Gear, that it would have done a job in '96. It's a new Sonic game. It would have had its place for the limited market who was looking for it. Everyone else that's moved on to Mega Drive, bigger fish to fry, better experiences to be had. But I think there would be like a small kind of niche that was still on 8-bit, whether it was kids, the 96. You've not got that new Sega Saturn yet. Might get you a Mega Drive. Santa's good to you can get a Mega Drive for Christmas. Not that kind of, just play your Master System with your Game Gear. That kind of audience, I think, would have appreciated at that point in time a new Sonic for that system that they had.
Yeah. I think so. I think, and it's a little bit unfair to say about it, looking around. If we're obviously playing the washed out Master System version, and if you put your 1996 goggles on, think about playing it on the Game Gear screen when it hasn't faded as much, and those bright colors are in there, and you've got Sonic the Hedgehog on that resolution that looks like Donkey Kong does on the SNES, that looks like Sonic does in Sonic 3D. Which Sonic 3D is a cracking game, by the way. But that goes by that art style, and you think, yeah, do you know what? I'm quite happy with this. If I'd received it in 1996 as a birthday present, for a Game Gear that I was going to take on the bus on the way to, wherever, I'd be happy with it. It's not the best Sonic game, but it's not terrible. It certainly doesn't deserve some of the reputation that people. There was lots of comments on the YouTube video saying, "Oh, the best part about this game was when I turned it off. The Game Gear absolutely sings when this cartridge is removed, and all that sort of stuff." People were saying. I mean, I think the thing to bear in mind, if you're playing the Game Gear version, it's probably the way to go. The Master System version obviously isn't the best conversion. You can kind of tell with the other games on this list that were on the Master System, and Spinball included in that, they're a lot better optimized for the Master System hardware. You can tell that this was a rush. G-Sonic or Sonic Blast, whatever they called it in Brazil, was a complete rush job by the fact that when you complete the level, you've literally got the small Game Gear screen, and they filled the rest of the resolution out with a completely random color.
I noticed that. It was like, from there, I was like, whoa, that's a Game Gear screen.
Triple Trouble is a bit like that on the Master System as well, but that's obviously not a official conversion. That's a fan hack. But yeah, this one was fine, mate.
Right. And that was a nice wee kind of segue into
As we
Triple Trouble.
we segue into Triple Trouble. This is joint. So joint fourth or joint third actually is Sonic Triple Trouble, and this one I own this one on the Game Gear as Sonic and Tails 2. This is one I always actually wanted to play. Now my sister had a Game Gear, but we didn't get too many games for it, and we were very active with the Master System, and we prefer playing on the big screen. And at the time, you know, this came out in November 1994, just one year to the day, I think, after Sonic Chaos, and we love Sonic Chaos. But yeah, we expected Sonic's Triple Trouble to come to the Master System. Obviously, this one, you know, Knuckles' 8-bit debut is on here. He's kind of playing the role that he has in Sonic 3, where he's working with Dr. Robotnik. And you've got Knack the Weasel, or Fang the Sniper, if you're in Japan. Obviously being a bit of a pain in the ass as well. And then you've got Metal Sonic. So that's where the Triple Trouble moniker comes from. And this one, I think, mate, is a solid little entry. There's parts about the design I'm not so keen on. I think some of the physics and level design I wasn't too overly impressed with compared to other entries. But I tell you what, when I made it to the end, because I completed it for the first time last year, finally made my way through it. Usually I try and get all the Chaos Emeralds, but I just abandoned that and just plowed through it. God, I loved it. Just because of the fighting Metal Sonic at the end, one-on-one. Superb. But yeah, what did you think of it?
I mean, this is when it's obviously had a Master System hack, because it's a Game Gear only game. It was Glitch is the kind of the hacker who's done the job on it to bring it to the Master System. So again, I did have this on the Game Gear. Never finished it. Shameful to say. But the physics thing you said about it, always feel that the jumping in it wasn't quite. Like, you would seem to you would have the inertia whenever you started jumping and it felt normal, and you would get to the top, and maybe they were trying to build in some kind of, like, at the top of the jump you slow down on the arc and then come back down. But I just felt that it felt like it kind of stuttered, and I found making some of the jumps were quite kind of off-putting. It was like the way the screen kind of moved with it. I just felt, I don't know again if we're trying to kind of simulate kind of that kind of momentum, but I found that aspect of it quite jarring. I didn't find the level design to be quite as good as Chaos, which we'll come to in due course, but decent enough game. But again, it wasn't meant to be played on a TV, it was meant to be played on a handheld, so it's kind of caveating it with that.
Yeah, the jumping's a great point, mate, because that's the thing that threw me off big time. When I first played it emulated, and when I first bought it a couple of years back, it was the jumping I had to get used to, and it adds that new ability. And you say it's not so much a new ability; it's a kind of just an existing feature, kind of remixed. So if you jump off a spring, you can turn it. You can roll into you can perform a spin attack kind of in midair. You can kind of roll as long as you press the jump, and the game kind of forces you to learn how to do that with the first boss at the end of the first zone, because you've got the boss that hovers above, and you've got the other kind of badnik with the spring on his back. You've got to bounce off that, roll into the ball, and hit the boss. And then that kind of inertia in the jump was what kind of put me off finishing it for quite a long time. I remember getting to the train stage and being absolutely hammered by the boss because I couldn't quite get the weight of the jumping quite right. But once I clicked with it, I really enjoyed it. As I say, I was kind of fanboying about Knuckles and Knack and obviously Dr. Robotnik's the final boss in there. I never finished it with the Emeralds. I'd quite like to go back to it. And I will go back to it because I did enjoy it. But for me, not quite as good as Triple Trouble. This is Triple Trouble. They're not quite as good as Chaos. I think you rank this one just above Chaos. I think that's why they kind of became joint third. And they are very similar games. Again, this one, again, by aspect, in November 1994, 1 year after Chaos. So they were kind of just honing their craft here.
Aye, I mean, Triple Trouble and Chaos do feel very similar. You know, I think level design maybe in Triple Trouble, I think Triple Trouble had levels which looked more kind of classic Sonic. You know, I think the kind of the general look of it felt a bit more kind of classic Sonic. I liked some of the kind of wee like the bonus items, like the spring, you know, like stand on a spring to bounce, and don't need to jump on a spring because you're on one bouncing around the stage. But it does the job, mate. It was good enough on the Game Gear. It's good that you've got an opportunity now. If you've got like an EverDrive, you know, you can put the hack on there, play it on the big telly. No,
Yeah.
it's definitely worth giving a try.
Yeah, I think you're right about the graphics as well, mate. They are. I think they are the best out of the 8-bit games. They are really, really great color palette. I think Chaos was a bit washed out in comparison. There's a lot of detail, and yeah, I prefer the Sonic sprite in this one compared to Chaos. And Chaos is we'll get onto Chaos, but in this one he looks nice, little cute little Sonic. He's a little bit squashed, but he's got all the features and he's recognizable. So I really like that one. So yeah, no, it's a great game.
Absolutely, mate.
But brings us on to the other joint number 3, which is Sonic the Hedgehog Chaos. And this was, again, released by Aspect in, this was October 1993. So not quite a year later was Triple Trouble, but this is 1 year after Sonic 2. So Aspect releasing Sonic games almost annually at the moment. It's like FIFA. But this wasn't, this wasn't like a lazy update. Everything changed about it. The Sonic sprite was different. Not as good, I didn't think, but it was different. Nice use of color. Had the super peel out from Sonic CD, where you can do the standing kind of running start and then peel off. And then you've got the spin dash from Sonic 2 on the Mega Drive. First time it'd been used in an 8-bit game. You got Tails, who's a playable character. There's parts of it that do feel like Sonic 2. So you've got the intro in Sonic 2, it's Robotnik taking Tails away. In Sonic Chaos, it's Robotnik taking an emerald away and then both chasing them. And I think the same music plays from memory, at least on the Master System version. But anyway, I absolutely loved it, mate. What about you?
I had it on the Game Gear, didn't play it on the Master System version till a long time, obviously getting like an EverDrive and didn't have a Master System back in the day. But it's funny you mentioned about the sprite. Actually, I really like the Sonic sprite in this. I think some of the kind of facial expressions that he pulls, like whenever he gets hit and he's waiting, I think there's a lot of kind of comedy in the facial expressions are really, for being 8-bit, they're really well done. The Sonic 2 aspects that you mentioned that I loved, I love the fact that the splash screen before a stage, that red, yellow, and blue, there's a lot of kind of wee fun elements. Like again, we mentioned the bonus items in Triple Trouble, the spring, like in Chaos, he's got that kind of rocket powered hoverboard for. And then you can fly. And then you get hit and you go flying away, and then there's kind of streaks of rings in the sky, and you can, it's like So again, the only reason why I put Triple Trouble just ahead of it is because I felt that the level design wasn't quite as kind of as close to the kind of classic Sonic kind of feel, but that doesn't make it bad. It's got very similar feeling kind of jumping. I think not quite as bad as Triple Trouble, but it doesn't feel as fast or smooth as the first two games that we're going to speak about shortly. But again, doesn't make it a bad game. It's a really, really good Sonic game. Absolutely.
Yeah. We loved it. Funny story about this one is obviously my brother asked for this for Christmas 1993. We got it Christmas Day, and by this point we finished Sonic 1 on the Master System, finished Sonic 2 on the Mega Drive, and Sonic 1 on the Mega Drive, and we're playing this, and we got it Christmas morning, and we'd finished it before we sat down for Christmas dinner. And I was like, oh right. So there's a couple of criticisms. It's not perfect. A couple of criticisms would be that, it's extremely easy, especially if you're not trying to get the Chaos Emerald. I was actually playing it on the train last week. Not via my Game Gear. I had the little at games, handheld. Battery power. As I thought, it's cheap. Like I got it for £3 off eBay. I thought if I lose it, I don't care. It's not like my Game Gear. This was free. I'm not going to buy another one. I thought, but I'll bring it when we go. I'll go out with the lads, and that'll do me for the train home. And yeah, I collected a lot of the emeralds on it. But if you don't try and get the emeralds, it's too easy. And the other thing, I think it's more of a Master System issue than anything else, is there's a lot of slowdown in it. It does slow down a fair bit, especially compared to the other two games. Triple Trouble slows down a bit. As you said, Blast doesn't seem to slow down a lot, but with Chaos, you can really feel the slowdown. When there's no slowdown, it runs at a pretty decent lick. It's very smooth, very fast, but unfortunately, slowdown rears its ugly head quite a few times, especially when you lose your rings. But yeah, another little bit of trivia about this one: the Mecha Green Hill Zone. I love that. Aside from the fact that I love the way that they remixed Green Hill and kind of said, right, yeah, there's no Green Hill. Well, yeah, it's been mechanized now, and there's all the water is now toxic sludge and all that sort of stuff. But the music for that is a remix of You Can Do Anything. Yeah, so it's brilliant. So yeah, love that, because it's my aspect who I think had a hand in Sonic CD one way or another. So the DNA is all, it's like it's all connected. They're drawing the lines over the screen. But yeah, it shares a lot of DNA with Sonic 2 and Sonic CD, which is why it's so good. But yeah, brilliant little game.
I didn't get Chaos until like way after, because I remember that was one of the cheap games that I got in What Everyone Wants in Clydebank, mate. that was one of the games on the wall, along with Alien 3, Terminator, RoboCop versus Terminator, Mortal Kombat 1 and 2, Wolf Child, PGA. You've never seen so many copies of PGA Golf for the Game Gear in your life as this shop had, by the way. Like, if they were sending them back to
I was going to say.
Again, it's all coming back to this, mate.
It's all coming back full. I mean, I've got my copy of Chaos right here. It's going to let me get it out. This is my original box. And then when I bought my Master System, my brother's Master System home, I opened it up and there was no cartridge in there, so I had to rebuy the cartridge.
Oh man.
Oh, but yeah, brilliant game. But mate, we're getting to that's the joint bronze medal, and worthy bronze medal holders they are, but there can only be one. The silver medal, second place. I think you had this as your number one originally, and then I think this was one of the ones that changed position. I had this as number two, and this is Sonic the Hedgehog 2 for the Master System Game Gear. Came out in October 1992, a full month for the 16-bit Mega Drive version. So obviously it has the debut of Tails in it. He's not playable because he gets kidnapped. But yeah, it's this first Sonic 2 game, first appearance of Tails. It's a tough game.
I mean, I think the reason why I switched them round is because, like, again, I'm using the Game Gear as a kind of basis there, and I always had a big bugbear with Sonic 1 on Game Gear because the sprite was too small. His face looked shocking. He looked like a scrunched up a wee Jack Russell trying to bite your ankles. It just didn't look like Sonic. Whereas Sonic 2, the sprite was bigger. It just felt like it moved faster. But when I went back again and kind of I played the Master System version of the first game, and it was night and day to the Game Gear one. The sprite looks better. It's bigger screen, but it just felt better on that kind of larger screen. And I felt that Sonic 2 on the Game Gear doesn't kind of connect as well in terms of the Mega Drive game. Got the spin dash in it. Level design's completely different. I mean, the first level of Sonic 2 on 8-bit is like worlds apart from like it's quite kind of bland, that kind of red brick and the wee carts and the lava and then there's the boss, which is like it reminds me of that the almighty, was it the Sarnak pit and like Star Wars? Just these wee pincers that are going like that and the wee balls bounce and then you've got
Sonic slowly digested over 1,000 years.
Aye, that's it. Mate, I took like no years, that's an exaggeration, but it felt like years. Like, ding, 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 ding. Stop fucking hitting me. It's like the ball bounces with cannonball, and each one that comes varies and how high it bounces. And see, try to bloody get it. 'Cause obviously, you've got to. And I think it's got like 7. You've got to get. Is it 7, 6, or 7? You've got to hit
8
that clover.
hits. You need
Aye.
8 hits.
And I'm like, in the name of God. So it is tough. It's good, but it's tough.
Yeah. So, yeah, the point you make about the underground zone. And as far as I know, aside from Sonic Spinball, which we won't talk about anymore, but that is the only time that you have it. Well, let's just say in Sega, Sonic platformers. It's the only time when you don't have your blue skies, your seasides, and your green hills, green, whatever. You've got whatever Wave Ocean in Sonic 06, Green Hills, Emerald Hill, Angel Island, Azure. God, I can't remember the Sonic Chaos Zone, but they've all got great green. That's Sonic's thing, isn't it? Sonic is your opening stage is your great green playground. Sonic 2 is so dark. It's like, hey Sonic, guess what? Your mate's been captured, and now you got to go through this horrible, bleak underground mine to go get him. Even when
Probably was in a bad mood when they made this game.
It does feel, this is like the Dark Knight Returns Sonic the Hedgehog, isn't it? It's like you get to the Sky High Zone, and even that's a little bit washed out. You get one act where, with the hang gliders drove me insane as a kid. Piece of piss now, but as a kid I couldn't work them out. So I just used to just roll up into a ball and jump that whole chasm on Act 1. But you get one act where it's kind of, in the blue sky and green fields, and then it goes to like you're caught in a thunderstorm in Act 2, and then you're fighting a giant chicken in Act 3, and then there's quite a lot of variety in there. And the reason why I ranked it so high is because the level design is actually fantastic. It's a great looking game. It's very different to every other Sonic game that's out there, whether it's 16-bit or 8-bit. So it's a completely different approach, which is great. It's fresh in that way. And you play it today, it's still unlike anything else out there. Not in terms of gameplay, because the gameplay is there. The physics are almost spot on, pretty much in line with what you have in Sonic the Hedgehog 1 on the Master System. The physics are great. The gameplay is great. It's just rock hard. I'm going to be 100% honest. If we were talking about, I'm talking about the game, about the Master System version, that's my number 2. If we're talking about the Game Gear version, this might be my 3 or 4, because the Game Gear version is just too hard. So it's tough on the Master System, but as you say, that Zone 1 boss, you've got, and then you can jump. On the Game Gear, it's and that's it. You've got no time. You've got no time to think, and it's random as well. So you can't even figure out the pattern. It's an arsehole of level design, and it's the same with the Zone 2 boss. Zone 3 boss gets a little bit easier, and so Zone 4 and Zone 5. But Jesus Christ, the Green Hill stage is hell on earth on the Game Gear, because you cannot see where you're going. So Act 3 so if anyone's not played it, on Act 3 on Green Hills, it's got an S at the end, it's not Green Hill Zone, Green Hills Zone, which has got the fantastic You Can Do Anything soundtrack, instrumental on there, which sounds glorious. But yeah, you have to make your way to the boss. And the thing about the boss stages, the Act 3 stages in the 8-bit Sonic games, you don't have rings to fight the bosses. You have to do it without a boss, which isn't a problem for most games. But on Green Hills Act 3, you've got to navigate huge chasms of spikes, and all you've got are springs, and if you bounce from spring to spring, there's a pattern to it, which is fine on the Master System version because you can kind of see where the springs are, but you've got no chance on the tiny little Game Gear screen. I haven't played that game since I lived in my old house, and I think it must be about 2 years ago now that I was on that zone and lost all my lives, and I felt like chucking a Game Gear through the window. So I've not played the Game Gear port since. If I ever want to play this game, I'll play it on the Master System. But on the Master System, it's fantastic. It's tough. As I say, it's a dark game. If you don't get all the Chaos Emeralds, which are they're pretty well hidden. If you don't get them, your game finishes at Zone 6, which is the Scrambled Egg Zone. You beat Silver Sonic and the game ends. And Sonic runs along to the credits on his own, looks up into the sky, and there's stars of Tails, which basically everyone's interpreted. So yeah, that's where Dr. Robotnik kills Tails if you don't finish the game properly.
I mean,
and it's when I say it's the darkest Sonic game, it really feels pretty fucking bleak.
you call it the Dark Knight Returns version. It's like, I have killed your friend.
It's like it killed the Red Hood.
It's like Robotnik has become Bane. It's like that's dark, isn't it?
It's horror. It's terribly dark. You know,
imagine not being a kid back there like that. It's like,
yeah, the music's so sad when he does it. You get this horrible, like melancholy themes playing while the credits are rolling, and you get to the end. It's like duh, 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 and he stops and he looks up to the stars and goes, "Oh, I didn't save my dead fox, mate." It's like Jesus.
That's Sega teaching you life lessons early on through 8-bit Sonic games.
Yeah, but yeah, you know, it kind of works. It's got levels to it. It's a fantastic little game, and I've grown to appreciate it a lot more. And now that I'm older, as a kid, I didn't like it as much. I thought it was too tough, too dark. But now I appreciate it as its own thing, and I really love the fact that it's so different from everything else before and after. So it's great. And the last zone, absolutely love the last zone when you get all the emeralds and you get to the crystal egg zone again. Every Sonic game starts with Green Hills, Blue Lakes, ends with Robotic Fortress. Sonic 2, where it starts with the Dark Underground mode, ends with this crystallized castle that Robotnik lives in. Fantastic music and great level design, and a really tough but greatly satisfying boss. So it has a bit of everything. You gotta work for it though. That's what I'll say.
I think I'll put that in my playlist actually to go through on the Master System, mate. I think
Yeah.
never get near getting even halfway through it on the Game Gear. As I say, it took ages to get past that first boss, and that was actually off-putting.
Yeah,
you know, it was. I think that's why as well. That when I was kind of thinking back to it, I was trying to look at it. I was ranking them from perhaps a review aspect, as in how it runs, how it looks. But whenever you look at it in terms of maybe going back, it was just not. I would always plump for the first game just because I could get further. Like it had those fucking cannonballs.
Oh yeah. Yeah, the first game's got its own tough moments. But yeah, Sonic 2, I think it is an 8-bit classic. And I often like putting a post up. I've done it a few times on Twitter saying Sonic 1, Sonic 2, Sonic Chaos are the greatest trilogy of 8-bit platformers ever made. And that sometimes gets the Nintendo fans a little bit irate. But there we go, mate. That's Sonic 2 at number 2, which means, you know, obviously by process of elimination, we are now at number 1 and top of the podium. Of course, it is the original 8-bit Sonic the Hedgehog. This wasn't actually released by or developed by Aspect. Aspect did them all except for Spinball, which was done by Sega Technical Institute. And they didn't touch Sonic the Hedgehog 1. Sonic the Hedgehog 1 was actually developed by Ancient. If that name sounds familiar, then you might know them from a certain game called Story of 4. What other games did they make? Well, if I tell you that the main producer for Sonic the Hedgehog 1 on the Master System Game Gear was a certain individual named Yuzo Koshiro, then you might know that Ancient also made the Streets of Rage games. When you take that into account, you're probably sitting there thinking, well, no wonder this game is number 1. But James, I've gone into this one on blog posts. I've gone into this one on my top 10 childhood Master System games. I'll hand it over to you first, mate. What do you think about this one? Why was this number 1 for you?
I think just because it was the first Sonic game I played that felt close to that Mega Drive game. It was the first one I think that kind of inspired that sort of, oh, finally I get to, it starts off with the blue skies and the green hills. It starts off that classic Sonic look. There's just kind of so much charm, the music as well. Like I always remember the kind of wee stage when you go in, it's all the springs, the special stage. It's got the kind of the mazes with all the rings and the springs.
Yeah.
It's do 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 And it's just so cheery, and it's like, and then you kind of can also have some fun with it because you get stuck at boing, 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 get stuck in the corners. But aye, it's got such charm to it. Again, the Game Gear pack that I got, it did have that Sonic sticker in the bottom left hand corner, so it came with it. As I say, the sprite on the Game Gear version did annoy me because the face just always looks weird to me, but it moves at a great pace. You know, doesn't skip a beat. It's just gorgeous to look at, gorgeous to play. So it's, again, while Sonic Spinball didn't quite manage to hold up in the nostalgia stakes when I put it on, the 8-bit Sonic certainly did, and I think the Master System version is definitely more enhanced than it's not just a straight lift and drop. That is, the sprite looks a lot better. Level design's pretty much the same, but the sprite looks better, and it's just a lovely, gorgeous, vibrant, happy, cheerful wee Sonic game.
Beautiful. I'd go as far as to say it's a masterpiece. Someone on Twitter the other day was talking about it, and they came up and said, well, actually, Sonic Game Gear and Sonic Master System are the same game. I was like, well, actually, they're not. The level design between the two, in certain cases, it's subtly different. In certain cases, it's completely different. The waterfall in the jungle zone, for example, is completely different between the two versions. The special stages are also completely different. As you say, mate, the sprites are different, the resolution, the play field, there's certain different design differences between the two. I actually think it's worth playing both of them. Unlike Sonic 2 and the Game Gear, I think the Game Gear version of Sonic 1 is more accommodating for that lower resolution screen. The design changes are a lot more logical, and it's not as difficult. In fact, it's just, you know, playing it is just like playing a version of the Master System game, which it is. This was the first game, the first Sonic game I ever played. So, I mean, I'm wearing a Sonic shirt. I've got a shelf full of Sonic stuff there. So I cannot understate how much, or overstate how much of an impact this game had on my life. You know, this basically made me this. Without this game, mate, I'm not sitting here on a Sega podcast. I mean, it is that important. I absolutely adore everything about it. When I first played it on my brother's Master System on his birthday, when an uncle gave it to him, it just transformed the game to me. It was the first game, you know. I had a Commodore 64, but I never actually beat any of the games on it because they were rock hard. And as you know, as a fellow 8-bit micro game player yourself, some of those games were god awful or just impossible to finish or unfinished themselves. This was just a whole new thing for me. So yeah, I loved it. Loved the visuals. The visuals just feel like a perfect approximation of the Mega Drive. They're just, the compromises are all done in the right ways. Green Hill looks like Green Hill. And yes, the background's not as detailed, but the kind of the pastel color mountains in the background, I think they're just almost perfect. The music is absolutely glorious. The 8-bit renditions of the certain tunes are absolutely amazing. The new tunes, well, obviously it's Yuzo Koshiro, so obviously they're a little bit good. And, you know, if you don't just take my word for it, take the fact that Janet Jackson sampled Everywhere I Go from the Bridgestone song.
Brilliant.
Well, I can't play that game now without playing. When I get to the Bridgestone, it's like everywhere I go, oh, I know you are there, shining down on me.
Plenty of singing tonight, mate. Plenty of
I
singing.
know. But it's Sonic, isn't it? You got to sing. Sonic's always about the soundtrack. But yeah, there's just so much to it. Like the way that you can basically skip the whole first act if you
That's hilarious.
You go down the ramp fast enough and you shoot off the screen and then bounce off. You even go past the sign at the end.
Aye, if you pick up the speed boots first, you know, if you get the speed boots, and then you can jump across a couple of wee chasms with spikes, then you go down and you hit the wee down. Wing, the music goes mental. You go, the wee noise as you fly off, and then Sonic's literally off the screen by this point. He's gone. He's like, and then, you know, that whole first level, literally, talk about speed runs. I think it must be the original speed run, mate. That first stage, because you can clear it in silly time.
Oh, it's brilliant though, and I think it was 8-Bit Boy. Yeah, it was 8-Bit Boy who did it a couple of years ago as a Master System challenge. It's fantastic when he did that. It was a great series. And if you haven't seen 8-Bit Boy stuff, you definitely should check him out. But he did Sonic the Hedgehog as a score attack, and I'm thinking, do you know what? I'm pretty tasty at this game. I can do it without losing the life. And I got to the end and I posted a score, and I think I was like in the top 2 or 3. And then I just got absolutely smashed. And it's kind of like when we're talking about classic Sega games and their scoring, and I think we've talked before about games like Outrun 2 and Crazy Taxi and how they've got these like intricate scoring mechanisms. Sonic on the Game Master System is kind of like that. And I didn't know that you had all these tricks to increase your score. And obviously at the end, when you complete the game, it gives you a score, it gives you all these bonuses, how many emeralds you collected, how many special stages you did, and extra special bonuses that are hidden, which keeps the replayability up. And I was just thinking, that's 30 years of this game that I've just learned a whole new dimension of how it's meant to play. And that's something that the other games that we've mentioned tonight, they kind of lack. Yeah, I could waffle about this one for absolutely ages, mate. But for me, easily the best platform game on the Master System, on the Game Gear of that entire 8-bit generation. I actually prefer this to Sonic the Hedgehog on the Mega Drive. I don't prefer it to Sonic 2, but I definitely prefer it to the original Sonic on the Mega Drive, which, although I'm not as critical as Sega Lord X is about the original Sonic game, I do share his criticism around how some of the level design is, where you've got fast stage, slow stage, fast stage, slow stage, whereas the original Sonic on the Master System feels a lot more consistent and a lot more, the pace is a lot more even all the way through, and you have this escalation through the blue sky sunny levels, and as you get to the map is another great little touch. You've got the map of the island, and then as you get to the latter half of the game, you zoom in and you're in the dark kind of metropolis streets of Labyrinth Zone, Scrap Brain Zone, and the Sky Base. So it feels a lot more consistent. There's a better flow to it, so it just works. And again, it works on a lot of levels. It's almost got that narrative of going deep into enemy territory as Sonic. It's got, score attack potential for people, for replayability. It's got an amazing soundtrack. It plays just as well, maybe even a little bit more refined than the Mega Drive Sonic. It's almost perfect as far as I'm concerned. And as I say, this is the game that set me on this course and made me a lover of Sega forever and ever.
I'm just sitting here enjoying watching the passion for it. Honestly, I mean, I'm kind of, it's almost, it's kind of similar to whenever I speak about like that experience with Virtua Fighter. Like it meant that much to me that, like, likewise, without that moment that I did the parody of on my Twitter page, that day, that I wouldn't be sitting here doing this.
The day it thundered, right?
a black car. But it's I wouldn't be sitting here doing this if it wasn't for that moment in Virtua Fighter. So that's how I'm just sitting here, mate. It's like, please don't worry about getting on. I know how much Sonic the Hedgehog as a series means to you. I knew whenever we were going to do this that this was pretty much going to be your forte. Your knowledge of Sonic, the levels, everything about it is just it's off the scale. So I'm just happy to sit here. If you want to go off and talk about Sonic, mate, I'm happy to sit and listen. You can't fake that passion, mate. That was brilliant. No. I enjoyed that.
No, good. Yeah, well, hopefully the viewers and listeners did as well. But no, honestly, as I say, I can't overstate how much of an impact that's had on my life as a gamer. That's why I go back to it annually. Absolutely adore it. And yeah, it's kind of like when my brother got that Master System, and again, it's kind of similar to your Virtua Fighter story. I owned a Commodore 64 and I played Alex Kidd, and I thought, this is all right. This is kind of like Flimbo's Quest. And I played Space Harrier. I was like, wow, this is impressive. And I played a few other games, Mickey Mouse, etc. But when I played this, it was like the C64, I could have happily never touched it again. And of course I did, and I went back to it, but it was love at first sight. And this was the game that got me saying I love Sonic, going into school assemblies going, if I had a pet, I'd have a hedgehog and I'd call it Sonic. It's got me buying Sonic the Hedgehog, begging for a Mega Drive, and set me on this course. Got me saying, no, I don't want a Super Nintendo. As much as I enjoy Street Fighter, I'm getting Sonic the Hedgehog and I'm getting a Mega Drive. So Yeah, it's funny how these one single games, Virtua Fighter for you, Sonic the Hedgehog on the Master System for me, can have just such an impact on our lives, and it just takes that one special game to just change your entire perception of gaming.
That's that, mate. Sliding doors moments, if ever there was any.
Yeah, and funny enough, I actually played Super Mario Brothers before Sonic the Hedgehog and wasn't anywhere near as impressed. So make of that what you will.
I've
Great
already
game.
said on here, mate, that Nintendo games, they might be great, but they've never, and it's even before the whole Sega stuff. Like I was never ever drawn to wanting like an NES or a SNES at all. So, aye, I don't blame you, mate. I don't blame you.
Yeah, I mean, I do love Mario now. And I like the original Super Mario Brothers, and I've gone back to it a few times. And I enjoy playing it on the NES Mini, and my wife's got a lot of affinity for the NES. So I got her a NES for her birthday, so I got the original on that, and I play it now and again. Big fan of Mario World, but it's just never. It didn't have the impact on me the way that Sonic the Hedgehog did. And for some people, Super Mario Brothers has had that impact, and that's why there's a lot of NES fans and Nintendo fans. But yeah, it was Sonic on the Master System that did that for me, and yeah, I've gone into it in the top 10 Master System games. I've spouted it off in here. I'm pretty sure one day down the line I will do a massive deep dive into the 10 things I love about Sonic on the Master System or something. I'll give it a bit of airtime between the two before I do that. But yeah, I could go on about this game forever, mate. But it's best that we probably end it right there.
A good place to finish it, mate.
It is, but mate, it's been an absolute blast. This one, it's flown by. I think we went through these in pretty quick order. From as I said at the very beginning, the where we were, how I felt about Sonic Spinball, to where we ended up.
Look how we're finishing on a happy note.
And I told you we'd end up on a high.
Exactly,
But
mate.
but yeah, I think we hopefully gave the Master System and Game Gear some much needed 8-bit love here, and it's been great going through, great playing these again as well. I know I played these. I played Blast and Spinball last night. I played the other four enough that I know these inside out. But yeah, it was nice. As much as I didn't like Spinball, it was kind of interesting giving it a lot of time last night, because I thought it's one I really haven't given enough attention to. Maybe I will like it. Wrong. But Blast, especially on players, I gave it some time, and I don't know if you feel the same.
Aye, pretty much, mate. It was nice to go back, and I say Blast is one that I hadn't played before, so I went into that with totally kind of fresh eyes, which is never easy to do. It's something I speak about as well, that it's hard for people with the time that's passed and the technology that's come to play an old game for the first time. Not everyone can do it and be, subjective about it, but I just went in going, right, I've never tried this. Well, let's just give it a go and see what happens. And, I came at it not trying to compare it to everything else, just taking it on its own merits. And it was okay. Spinball didn't hold up at all. Test of time was destroyed on that. So just goes to show you, nostalgia doesn't quite always help in some occasions. But
yeah,
no, I think Sonic 2, I think on the Master System, I think I'll try and give that a go and see how far I can get this time, rather than being destroyed by bouncing cannonballs.
Yeah, definitely give that one a try. Maybe use a guide to get the Chaos Emeralds. They can be a bit of a pain, but once you know what they are, they're okay. And then watch a video to see where the springs are in Green Hill Zone X3. Otherwise, you'll be tearing your hair out. But yeah, I've got a real hankering to play the top 4, 1, 2, Triple Trouble and Chaos now. Funny, I was on the way home listening to the Sonic 3 soundtrack, and I feel this weekend is going to be a very Sonic the Hedgehog weekend, mate.
Nothing wrong with that, mate.
Nothing wrong at all. But viewers, listeners, hope you've enjoyed that one. Some long overdue 8-bit love, and some Sonic the Hedgehog love for the first time on the video channel. So please let us know what you think of the 8-bit Sonic games. Hopefully you've been letting us know what you think about them in the Sega Discord, or in the live chat in the comments below. Let us know in the comments what your favorite Sonic game on the Master System or Game Gear is, even if it's not one of these 6. If you want to talk about Sonic Drift, Sky Patrol, all of those other weird and wonderful Sonic and Tails games that came through, or give us a shout on social media. Media. We're both on Twitter. James is the Segaholic. I'm at super_D. You can catch the account at Sega Guys. We're also on Instagram, Threads, TikTok. Still trying to make our way around all these new social medias. Will Twitter die? Oh, I don't know. The jury's still out, but there we go. James, mate, as always, it's been a blast. And viewers, listeners, we will see you on the Sega side.
SEGA.